we were at with the Smaragd wine. So if you could talk a little about Kreuzberg and how does it differ from the other ones?
Yeah, so the Kreuzberg itself is facing east, west, and north because of the curve of the Danube, and our vineyards stand more on the eastern facing part, which means that the wines get a little bit more morning sun, and less afternoon sun. So, and morning sun is normally, in terms of picking time, pretty good because the wines, the berries, they dry out a little quicker because of our foggy nights because of the Danube River.
Okay.
Yeah. And the vineyard itself is, as we mentioned before, amphibolite, and it's a very meager soil, but not that meager not to plant Grüner Veltliner out of it. You know what I mean? It's vines get enough water to produce high quality grapes, but we also have some Riesling there. So it's actually a single vineyard which can do both Grüner Veltliner and Riesling.
And in terms of altitude?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it must be something between 250 and 350, something like 250 meters up to 350 meters above sea level. It's also a mountain, mountain where the Black Forest is behind it, and so you have some lower altitude vineyards, of course, and higher ones. But the average is probably something between about 300 meters. It's not that very high, so that the highest vineyard in the Wachau Valley, situated in the Spitzer Graben, I think these vineyards, they are about 550 or 600 meters above sea level, which is the absolute maximum what we have here in the Wachau Valley. But 300 meters also not so bad.
But the Danube is already on 200 meters, right?
A little less, correct. It must be a little less because the village is on 200 meters.
Okay. So hopefully less than,
yeah, of course. So the Danube must be about 150, 160, 170, something like that. But I'm not 100% sure about that, so please don't.
Don't quote me on that,
Yeah.
But it's, wow, this is really a complex nose, and this is what I like about the Smaragd wine, because it's really this ripe, pomaceous fruits like pear, but also this blossom, this flowery notes. So this is really combined together, this elderflowery and maybe also this almost green tea aroma. So it's such a complex nose. I love it.
Oh, that's actually a very, very cool thing when that's correct. Yeah, what we like it a lot. It's actually one of our, of course, most important wines, especially for even the restaurants and also for the private customers. A lot of people like this wine.
Wow, and really, it's just so much extract, and so the viscosity is so low, you can almost bite this wine. It's almost like a soup, man.
Yeah. 2018 actually was the earliest vintage we ever had in our history. That's actually coming from the very hot spring what we had. So actually we didn't have spring in 2018. We had winter, and then the spring was so hot that it could be a summer. So winter ended, and more or less that hot spring came. And then we had the earliest blossom we ever had, which was appearing in the end of May. And normally we have it in about middle of June. So we were like 10 to 20 days earlier than in a normal year. And then we started picking on the 5th of September for the base wines, for the Federspiel base wines. And normally we start, as I mentioned, at the the end of September. So that was a tough vintage. Yeah, it was the quickest ever, and yeah, that was powerful.
But actually, in this wine, I could feel more this inorganic or so-called minerality in this wine.
Yeah.
It's just really like little rocks floating around in my mouth. It's really dominated by that, but also I think what is really a good measure of quality is that the finish is more fruity than acidic. So it's really built up.
Yeah. So that probably comes because of the hot summer. Normally, if you have that hot days, you lose your acid, and Grüner Veltliner struggles with a little acid. It's actually quite funny because my parents, my father and my grandfather, they always struggled to have too much acid. So they actually needed to decrease the acid in the wine because their wines weren't just drinkable. And we have now the complete opposite. So we actually need to look for the harvest date, not too late, because the later you pick, the less acid you have, because the berry just produces sugar, and the riper they become, the more acid they lose. So actually now we look for we look closer on the acid than on the sugar. To be honest, when we decide to pick, this is how the time changed. To be honest, yeah.
And how do you think it will change?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not going back to my father's city. So yeah, that's actually also what we think nowadays, that we at the moment, to be honest, we are focusing more on planting Riesling, because Riesling just handles the situation with the acid better than the Grüner, and then we try to keep the Grüners on the little lower altitude sides than the higher ones, just to keep the acid. And yeah, it's gonna be tough, but probably climate change is a big thing, which probably we don't, or what we need to get used to it.
Yeah, true. We don't have a choice, unfortunately.
Yeah, doesn't look like it at the moment, though.
Yeah. And what about malolactic fermentation?
Sometimes it happens, sometimes not.
So you don't encourage it, or?
We don't look that much for the mellow. Sometimes it happens because of the spontaneous fermentation. Our fermentation time is so much longer. Then sometimes we have a side malolactic fermentation next to the spontaneous fermentation, but then it makes the wine a little rounder. But we don't. But no. Sometimes you get a little buttery taste out of a malolactic fermentation, but this is normally coming because of too early sulfuring. You know what I mean? Because then the SO2 takes place, and that mixture that produces the chemical reactions with the components of the mellow, and then you get that buttery taste. And this is why we keep the wines unsulfured for a long time after fermentation afterwards, to not get these tastes, and then it gets back to the fruity taste of the white wines. Yeah, but sometimes, of course, we cannot handle it for 100%, so we let it happen, which is a little bit more the biological way, more or less. Yeah.
And in terms of this wine, do you remember if it went through or partially?
In this case, there was not a mellow. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so maybe let's go back to 2019. Riesling Federspiel Kienberg.
2019 compared to the 2018 vintage was later. Luckily, later means we had a quite a normal harvest stage at like we started picking at the end of September. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we finished in the, I think, third week of October. Mm-hmm. And this Riesling is actually this single vineyard site. Kirnberg is our most important single vineyard site for the Riesling. This is mainly Gföhler Gneiss, yeah, which is coming from a volcanic situation in the past. And what we get here is a lot of also a little bit compared to the Zanz, you get a lot of fruit to taste in the nose.
Yeah, true. A lot of apricot, what I get actually, and almost this mango, yep. Almost this exotic tropical side.
This is actually very typical for the single vineyard Kirnberg. Mm-hmm. But then in the taste on the tongue, you get not a very broad feeling. You don't get a overwhelming flavor. It's very silent. It keeps or like it stays straightforward, yeah, with mineralic, acid-driven aftertaste with a good phenolic bone. What I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The phenolics they keep the wines alive. They keep the wine drinkable for a longer time. Even for the Federspiel category, I can suggest a standing time for 5 to 6 years easily. Mm-hmm. Like we had in February when the restaurants were still when the restaurants were still open and life was normal. Yeah. We tasted at 2013 Riesling Federspiel from the single Kirnberg. It was still perfect. Uh-huh. So sometimes the people only sometimes the people think that the wines from the Wachau Valley only can age when it's Smaragd standing on the label, but that's not true. So even the Federspiel wines can age very easily. Yeah.
I also experienced it, if I may say, or refer to Nikolaihof. I think they really produce age-worthy wines perfect too.
Yeah, Niki is like a freak when you think about him, because he keeps it in the tank or in the barrel and then he just bottles it when he thinks that's now it's good.
Yeah, it's ready. Yeah, or if he doesn't have enough space in the cellar.
Oh yeah,
but I really get this, not phenolic bitterness, but really this phenolic taste. In the other wine, the Smaragd, the Grüner Veltliner, it almost turned this, this pear peel kind of character on this chest. I don't get in this wine so intensively, but also this citrusy acidity, I get. Yep. So not too inorganic, I would say, and
but we
slightly tingly.
2019, of course, has got now a disadvantage to the 18 vintage because it's less developed. Mm-hmm. But this wine we actually just bottled before the Corona crisis. So this wine was bottled in the middle of March. It was actually bottled in the week of the shutdown. So we had quite a lot of time at this time.
Memorable.
So we bottled it to this. So this is about in bottle for now 7 weeks. Mm-hmm. Very early. So leave it and drink it later on. Especially Riesling needs more time in the bottle to develop what we see. Mm-hmm. So if you like bottle a Grüner, like 2-3 weeks later on, it's on point.
Yeah.
And Riesling is the diva of the wine, that's what people say. So if you bottle it, it gets a shock, and then it takes months or 2 months to open up again and shows its best.
Yes. And also, this wine already has long aftertaste, even though it's a Federspiel. So at first, to be honest, I got some like kind of limoncello kind of characters. But then it's got complex, and also slowly this blossom honey characters coming through, and the acidity stays on the side of my mouth. really complex wines.
Do you think, or what do you think, is the Riesling? It's got the Riesling a little riper taste or the Kreuzberg? What you tasted before?
I think the Kreuzberg had a riper taste, but maybe with time this Riesling would also show some more riper taste.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe it's the vintage and the bottle aging. But I think the Riesling has more acidity, right? Yeah. So maybe this sensation also helps, yeah, to feel more fresh flavors.
Normally, our wines in the Grüner Veltliner style, as they switch between 5 and 6 grams per liter acid, and the Riesling normally have something between 6 and 7 grams per liter. So normally the Rieslings have got a more or less, in general, say a gram per liter more acid than the Grüners have. But normally also the Riesling they have less alcohol because they ripen later and slowly up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe let's try the oldest one, 2017 Riesling Wachau Reserve. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about this label, because it's an artwork on itself.
Yeah, correct. So in this case, I've got a lot to tell, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
Before I start with the label, I actually need to start with the winemaking itself. So it's called Riesling Reserve 2017. So the first question is probably, why is it not a Smaragd?
Yeah.
And the reason is because it's not 100% dry. It's semi-sweet or half dry. It's got about 10 grams per liter sugar.
Okay.
The wine law for Smaragd says that it must be dry, and dry means 9 grams per liter residual sugar. So in this case, because it fermented spontaneously, and all of a sudden it didn't ferment through, so the fermentation stopped at about 11 grams per liter. But luckily, the acid stayed very high, so we have almost 8 grams per liter acid. So we have a good balance between sugar and acid. When I taste the wine, I actually, if you get it blind, you wouldn't say that it's actually half dry, or actually it doesn't taste that sweet in my eyes.
Yeah, I also couldn't notice that actually, but it stays there half trocken.
Yeah.
And yesterday we tried, and that was the favorite wine of my girlfriend actually, because she also likes this, also this Gewürztraminer side, or maybe Pinot Gris fermented in barrel.
Yeah.
But it's really like 2 layers. I remember, like a little bit of sugar gives some weight, but the acidity keeps it fresh.
Yeah, and the most important thing on sugar is that it has got acid to stabilize it.
Yeah.
This is also why Riesling is very famous for its sweet wines. Because if you compare it to Grüner, Grüner is not that perfect variety for a sweet wine because it doesn't have that acid as a component to the sugar. And to go back to this wine, so this wine didn't ferment through completely, so it kept its sugar. So I was not allowed to put Smaragd on the label. But we pretty much like the flavor, and so we decided to bottle it on its own as it was after the fermentation. And the label itself is actually the label we had before the label which we have now. And the label shows actually the view from our garden. If you look at it a little closer, then you see on the left-hand side some vineyards, and then you see the castle of Dürrstein on the left corner. You see the church of Dürrstein, the blue church, and on the right side you see the monastery of Göttweig, which is in the Kremstal. So actually you see all these very famous thing, especially on the castle of Dürrstein. This is where Richard Lionheart was kept in the 14th century.
Okay.
So there was is it called crusader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crusader. Yeah.
And they kept him there as a prisoner. And then there's the history of singer Blondel who sang a song, and King Richard Lionel was the only guy who could repeat this song. And then he repeated that song, and then the people knew exactly, okay, he's kept in this prison, in this castle, and then they came and took him back, fought him back. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is the history of the castle of Dürrstein.
Poor him, because he could have stayed and drink these beautiful wines probably in that time too.
100% sure if in the 14th century if he was about drinking wine in castle. Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, from the taste, I get this kind of acidic tropical fruit, so like maracuja and this kind of tangerine.
Yeah. And this wine actually went through malolactic.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so you have a different flavors,
Yeah.
little riper flavors. So and in the taste, like if you compare it to the Riesling, it's completely different.
True.
It's more a little rounder body, more full body.
No.
You've got a little less acidity because of the mellow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, we actually liked it, and we thought that it's gonna fit to our portfolio very good as a side probably.
Yeah.
And this is why also then we thought to put it on a different label. This actually was also the idea of my girlfriend.
Good idea for sure.
She liked the old labels, and in our tasting room we have a history of all our labels.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came to the winery, she saw that bottle and saw, oh, that was a, well, what kind of label was that? And then I explained to her, okay, you see the Castle of Dürrstein, all that bum, 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 bum. And we had this wine. And so this wine is also very special because we didn't produce it in 2018 and 2019. So it's just 2017. And yeah, we'll see if we have a next wine which doesn't go through fermentation 100% through, then maybe we continue a second one. But yeah.
And you could call it reserve because it's more than 13% alcohol, or?
No, that's in the Wachau Valley. There's not a 100% restriction for reserve.
Okay.
But reserve means, of course, it's more full-bodied.
Okay.
Because I think on the label 13.5.
13.5, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit, of course, more on the full-body side, mm-hmm. more on the stronger character, and less on the Federspiel character, probably. Which is, it's not a wine probably to have it quickly on the terrace on a summer day or something. It's more a wine who needs probably strong food. We had it on Tuesday. We had it with vegetable curry.
Okay.
It was very well.
Yeah. Yesterday I actually had it with the chicken curry.
Yeah, curry. Yeah.
That was perfect, actually.
Especially if the curry is a little spicy.
True. Then yeah, with a lot of curcuma.
This wine fits perfectly.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good food wine, actually. And just good to have around in a restaurant because it still has this mouth-watering effect, but you don't have this overwhelming bout of acidity. So it's really well balanced. I think it's really just good to have around. Maybe I hopefully we have it in the restaurant later when it opens.
We could finish,
Yeah, and also maybe if you could, because I'm sorry, but I couldn't ask, or I haven't asked about your present or current label. If you could just tell a little bit about this fish.
Yeah, on the fish, what you see on the label is called a Danube salmon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this fish belongs to the families of the trout. Yeah. But it becomes much bigger than a normal trout. It becomes about 1 meter and 20 to 50 centimeters, so it becomes quite big.
Mm-hmm.
And this fish actually swims mostly in the Danube, but there's also some side rivers in Austria where this fish is having its life. and we actually, or my father farms this fish. So we have next to our house a little fish farm where we farm this fish. And the special thing is that we don't farm it for local restaurants or for restaurants in Austria. So actually we farm it to bring the fish back to nature. So because the fish is on the red list in actually whole Europe, mainly because of overfishing and the ships and power stations, of course. And so we farm this fish until they have a size of about 30-40 centimeters, which is around after 3 to 4 years. So we keep the fish 3 to 4 years in little casks filled up with ground level water from the Danube. And when the fish is big enough, we put them back into the river. And yeah, so we give this fish some new hope and new stay. So we also we don't just put it into the Danube River. There's also some rivers or 2 rivers in Austria which are called the the Enns, which is in Upper Austria in Steyr, and then we have a river which is called Mur, and this river is in Styria, near the city of Graz. And yeah, we have some friends there, and they come with a tank. Yeah, we put the fish into the tank, and these guys then later on they put the fish into the river. We don't get any money out of it. We do mainly swapping. That means river from this person, then we are allowed to go into the river and take a big one out of the river. A big one means meter and even more. And out of this fish, we create a new population. So that means that we never mix DNA. Yeah, correct. So we never mix brother and sister, more or less. So we always get new genesis into the farm, and yeah, then we put that fish also later on back into the river. That's a circle of life.
True.
My father started this in the early 80s. Quite a long history already, but he never got any money out of it. It's just his hobby.
So why did you put it on the label?
Because a lot of people knew us because of that, actually, and the label become quite famous from time to time because of our fish farm, and we still keep it. Yeah, it's not. If you see it, you don't recognize it, or you don't understand the meaning of the fish and the wine. A lot of people ask me, is that wine good for a fish pairing? And I say, yeah, of course, because but this is not the reason why we have a fish on the label. Yeah, correct. It's the reason.
Yeah, but it's it's not a typical wine label, so I think it's a really good also marketing campaign, maybe, or marketing idea as well, because it's also very distinctive. Yeah. And maybe if you could just ask about the recent DAC laws, because we are now recording this on the 14th of May, and from tomorrow on, Wachau also became a DAC region, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it was a long process until we got it, but finally Wachau is becoming a DSC label from the 2020 vintage on. So the 2019 vintage will be historical because it's the last vintage without DSC, and 2020 will also be a very historic vintage because of the fucking Corona crisis. and the DSC thing. Yeah, the meaning is it's actually very different to the other DAC restrictions in Austria, because mostly the wineries or the the wine regions only have 1 or 2 or max or 3 varieties, including the DSA system. But our system is much more complex because we needed to fit it into the Steinfeder, Federspiel and Smaragd categories. And these 3 categories gives or says that it's or these 3 categories stays for all the white wines what we have in the Wachau Valley. So the Steinfeder, Federspiel and Smaragd category is not allowed for the red wines. No. But the red wine production is just 2 or 3% anyway. So that means we needed to fit or we needed to find a solution to combine both the Federspiel and Smaragd and Steinfeder category and the DSC. And nobody of us, really nobody, wanted to quit the Federspiel, Steinfeder and Smaragd categories because these categories are so well known in all over the world. So everybody knows Wachau wines, or if they see Federspiel on the label, and people who know about wine know that it's coming from from Wachau Valley. And if you see DAC is a little bit more complex. It can be from everywhere in Austria. So what the people from the people in charge of did was that they took the main 17 white varieties out of the box, took that for a DSC label. But the thing is, from this system on, we are only allowed to put the single vineyards on the labels on a Riesling and the Grüner Veltliner. So, for example, if you have Chardonnay, Smaragd, read blah blah blah. From now on, you are not allowed to put the single vineyard on the label. You are allowed to put Smaragd on the label, but not the single vineyard. So there is some. There is some producers who have changings. In my winery, I don't have to change anything because I have a Gelber Muscatella also in my portfolio, but there's not a single vineyard on the label. It just says Gelber Muscatella. If you have probably, let's say, if I would have probably, to get the people know, a Gelber Muscatella, Federspiel, Ried, Kreuzberg, for instance. Yeah. From that time on, 2020, I need to quit or to put the single vineyard name out from the label. So we are focusing actually on Grüner Veltliner and Riesling as single vineyard style, and leave all the non-Grüner Veltliner and Rieslings with the single vineyards behind. You know what I mean?
But then you can also label it like a village wine, and
you are allowed to label it as a village wine, but the village wine is then the biggest area what you are allowed to put on the label. Correct. So that's the solution.
Do you think it's a good direction what Wachau took?
Yes and no. I can understand some haters because we get a lot of haters now because they say it's out of the range of all the other DSC systems. But I even understand the people who were in charge of the Wachau DSC because they needed to fit in our existing labeling into the new DSC system. And what the people didn't want to have is that they have, let's say, a Muscatella Federspiel, and then you need to put Lower Austria on the label because you're not allowed to put Wachau DSC on the label. So what that means, or like this is probably what other peoples have, like in Kamptal, for instance. They have Grüner Veltliner and Riesling, DAC, and if they have, like, for instance, a Chardonnay, then they must put on the label Lower Austria. And that was our point. So now we had like a Chardonnay, Smaragd. A lot of producers have that. Or doesn't matter anything though. Let's put, for instance, Chardonnay, Smaragd. So then Chardonnay would, if Chardonnay wouldn't be in the DSC system, then you would have a Chardonnay Smaragd from Lower Austria, which is not possible, because then a Kremstal winemaker could have
Smaragd, yeah.
And that was the big problem what we had in our existing system, and nobody wanted to quit the Federspiel, Steinfeder, and Smaragd categories. These categories made history, actually.
So why do you think it was actually important for the Wachau to enter this system?
Probably it was just a process.
Okay.
In terms of the Austrian marketing board, the Austrian wine marketing board. Probably it has got a lot to do with marketing, and therefore I'm not seeing Wachau more Austrian wine marketing itself. That because Austrians wine production is about 1% of international wine producing. So Austria is like a tiny little piece on the label of international wines, and so probably the wine marketing board needs to, focus more on the DC category, and that's the point. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah, true.
I will fit in the system, and for me, it doesn't change any dimension, because I have the only thing what I need to change is to put Wachau DOC on the back label. So I don't have any problems with that solution, to be honest. But but if they would have quit the existing system, I would have a big problem, because there was a marketing master.
True, I think so too. Yeah. And I also asked this question because I actually recently uploaded a video about Wachau and just explaining the terroir. And also I think the word, or the wine word, is going into the direction of the kind of Burgundian winemaking, a Burgundian style, when it's really site specific, and then you can explain the terroir, the microclimate, the exposure, and so on. And I think Wachau had a really big advantage of that, because they have been, or you have been doing this for years, decades. And I think Wachau was really distinctive in terms of identifying more than 150 separate single vineyards. And I'm really glad that you didn't have to give up this, but that's why I asked you that why do you think Austrians did it, or Wachau did it?
There's actually a very good point. A lot of people compare the Wachau region to the Burgundy region. Even if you see my portfolio, I've got 3 varieties, but the whole portfolio makes out about, I'm not 100% sure now, but it must be about something between 12 and 14 wines or something. And that's just based on single vineyard wines. If I would stick on 3 varieties itself, then my portfolio would be 3 wines. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
It's very comparative to the Burgundy style, because you see, if you see all the famous single vineyards, Romani Conti, or it's actually that they even go further. They don't even put the variety on the label. They just put the single vineyard on the label. It's just it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they even have a step further. So, but that's gonna be a bit too close for a bit too much for us. So that's fine.
And if I could ask maybe some personal questions, because I noticed you're drinking a red wine. So what are you drinking maybe in your free time when you don't drink a local wine?
We actually drink a lot of wines. So before that, I had Grüner Veltliner from my best friend, which is called Gföhler.
Okay, yeah, I know this.
That is a Grüner Veltliner Smaragd Steiger 2013. But normally during or like in the evening when we have a wine with our food or something, we never drink our own wines. We just drink the competitors. So we yeah. I can show you what we drank during, because we had a little Corona crisis thing together. So we drank. Like if you see here, like we had Alzinger, we had Köhler Ruprecht, we had Ferrari. That's a very good friend of us, the 1947 Chenin Blanc from Stellenbosch, from Daniel Stedtler. We had famous Knoll, for instance. Then we had a Styrian wine from a very good friend, Schauer, Sauvignon Blanc. That's an old school collect from me, Wachter Wiesler, Blaufränkisch. So we actually drink everything. We had here Legermüller, Alram, Renner Kamptal. So and then we have the other side. What do we have here? We had here also a producer from our vineyard side. What was famous here? Let me see. Then we had Mannenkor Sophie.
Oh, nice.
Very good. Yeah. We had Kartäuserhof, Mosel. Then we had, when we speak about French wines, we had Domaine Vouvray.
Okay.
We had Künstler, Programmer Stielweg. We had actually a lot of German Riesling when I see here. We had here Löwenstein. Then we had the famous E.T., Blaufränkisch Riedmar Ringtal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, as you see.
And when you drink these wines, you also maybe drink it for pleasure, or you also take sometimes notes maybe, or?
No, actually, I never do notes. Of course, I compare it to my own wines. If I drink like the Wachau classics, but if we have dinner, then we have dinner, and then there's no time for notes.
True. Perfect.
But I don't need to have notes. I'm not a sommelier. You need to make the notes, no?
True, right. But I do it with pleasure, so.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I actually like to think that, especially in these days, that a sommelier, I think, should go back to his childhood, and when you touch everything and you want to taste everything, touch into your mouth and then compare it to other things. And I'm also really grateful that you sent these wines, and it's really interesting to compare even just the notes to other maybe Nikolaihof wines, and just to compare it with other Wachau wineries and what I get from different sites, and also from Federspiel, from Smaragd, and different soil types. So I think it's also very interesting. So I really like to take notes, and your wines made a good impression on me.
But to finish that, I think I actually have, or I get these questions a lot. What makes it different between the left riverbank and the right riverbank? And to be honest, there's not a big difference between the left and the right bank. It's much more difference between the eastern Wachau part and the western Wachau part. So that's much more influencing, because the Danube is a Danube, and that's it. So you know what I mean. It's just a river. So of course I need to take a bridge to come to the other side, but the climate, the sun doesn't make any change. You know what I mean?
And also I think Nikki, from Nikolaihof, Mrs. As, made a good point that the railway or the train is actually going on the other side, right? Yep. So he said maybe the other side got famous or more famous because all the people from Vienna came via the train, and then they stopped there.
The point is that Krems is on the other side of the river, and Krems has got the central station.
Okay,
that's the point. and we don't have on our side, we don't have a bridge for the railway.
Okay.
So that's the only thing, to be honest. Yeah, but we have but we don't have any problems to go to the other side, because we have bridges, we have ferries. Lots of the ferries are likely taken by the tourists. They love it, Yeah. And even the ferries, they even take cars, so there's not a lot of problems. And even we have some probably 5 to 10 wineries who have vineyards on both sides of the Danube.
Okay.
They drive the tractor on the ferry, go to the other side of the river by ferry, and then they treat their vineyards with a tractor, or doesn't matter, by hand. But they have both, or they have vineyards on both sides. That's mainly coming from family. From like, if you marry somebody of the other side, then you get together, and but mainly it's coming from the family side. But the river is a river, and it's not a big. It's actually
defining factor.
So that the people think that the left river bank and the right river bank, they fight to each other, but it's not true. It's not true. No.
It's not Bordeaux, then you can really distinguish the two sides.
Yeah, but it's the same like in Bordeaux, correct? It's that it's a left river bank and the right river bank, but that one river bank has got a little more percentage on Merlot. The other ones have more on Cab, but you never hear that they fight each other. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen.
Okay, so Joe, thank you very much for this evening. I think the conversation went for almost 2 hours, so it was a pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time, and beautiful wines. Hope to visit you.
Hopefully we see each other soon in personal, not on the TV or not on the computer.
Hopefully. Yeah.